The entire Walmart froze when the billionaire's daughter, dripping in diamonds worth more than the store itself, let out a scream so shrill it shattered the silence over aisle 7. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a declaration of war. The sound cut through the store like glass snapping. Conversations died mid-sentence. Shopping carts stopped rolling. A toddler halfway to a meltdown went silent, as if even he understood something big had just shifted in the air. Every head turned toward aisle 7, where fluorescent lights reflected off scattered diamonds and a single girl standing perfectly still, chin raised, eyes blazing. Celeste Sterling, 19, famous by birth, fear by reputation. She stood there in a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, her manicured fingers clenched into fists, breathing like she'd just been insulted by the universe itself. Around her, the aisle was still intact for now. Olive oil bottles stood upright. Soupkins slept peacefully in their metal rows. The calm before catastrophe. Behind her, gripping the shopping cart like a lifeline, was Mabel, 56 years old. Tired knees. A heart that had been loyal far longer than it had ever been appreciated. Mabel had worked for the Sterling family for 15 years. She had seen Celeste take her first steps on imported marble floors. She had wiped her tears when the wrong pony arrived for her 9th birthday. She had stood quietly behind the scenes while the world bent itself into impossible shapes to keep the Sterling heir smiling. Today was supposed to be simple. A lesson. A real-world experience. Mrs. Sterling had said that morning, sipping espresso from a cup that cost more than Mabel's weekly groceries. Take her shopping. Give her a budget. Teach her restraint. Restraint. Mabel almost laughed at the memory as she stood in Walmart, clutching a plain white envelope with $200 written neatly on the front. $200. The most dangerous object Celeste Sterling had ever encountered. Celeste glanced around the store with open disgust. "I can't believe people live like this," she muttered, her Valentino sneakers squeaking against the linoleum as if even the floor offended her. "The lighting is hostile. And why does everything smell like cardboard?" Mabel pushed the cart forward, scanning shelves, comparing prices with the precision of someone who knew exactly how far money could stretch and how easily it could snap. "We're here for essentials, Miss Celeste. Eggs, rice, vegetables. Just what's on the list." Celeste rolled her eyes. "You sound like my father's accountant." They reached the specialty food section. That's when fate blinked. Celeste's gaze locked onto a small glass jar resting under a soft spotlight, as if Walmart itself had been foolish enough to tempt her. Gold flecks shimmered inside like trapped sunlight. "Gold Ostra caviar," she read aloud, lifting it delicately between two fingers. $300. A smile curved her lips. Perfect. Mabel felt her chest tighten. She didn't even need to check the price tag again. She already knew. She checked the envelope anyway. An old habit born from years of making impossible numbers behave. "Miss Celeste," she said gently, "no, we can't afford that. It's more than the entire budget." The word "no" landed between them like a slap. Celeste blinked once, then slowly turned. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost polite. Mabel swallowed. "We have to stick to the list. Please put it back." Silence stretched. Somewhere down the aisle, a man reached for pasta sauce and froze, sensing danger without understanding it. A teenager raised her phone instinctively. Celeste stared at Mabel as if she'd just spoken a language that didn't exist. "No," she repeated, softer now. "Danger is soft. Mabel, my father owns an island." "I know, dear," Mabel said, forcing calm in her trembling voice. "But today we have a budget." That was when something broke. Not loudly. Not yet. But deep inside Celeste Sterling, a lifetime of never being denied, never being corrected, never being told enough cracked open. Her fingers tightened around the jar, and Mabel realized, too late, that this trip was never about groceries. It was about control, and Walmart was about to pay the price. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Celeste stared at the jar in her hand, as if it were no longer caviar, but evidence. Proof that the world had finally betrayed her. The gold flakes inside shimmered mockingly, catching the light, daring her to accept the impossible truth that someone, Mabel had told her no. Mabel reached out slowly, carefully, the way you approach a wild animal. "Miss Celeste," she said softly, every word chosen with care, "please, put it back. People are watching." That was the mistake. Celeste's lips parted in a sharp, humorless laugh. "People?" she echoed. "You think I care about people?" Her arm moved before Mabel could stop her. Not gently, not hesitantly. Celeste swung. The jar didn't shatter right away. It bounced once, rolling across the polished floor, gold and glass spinning together like a sick joke. Then crack. The sound was small but final. Black pearls scattered like spilled secrets. And something inside Celeste snapped completely. Before anyone could react, she swept her arm across the shelf. Bottles toppled. Jars flew. Olive oil exploded against the floor, slick and shining. Truffle salt rained down like glitter at a funeral. Gasps erupted around the aisle. "No!" Mabel cried, her voice breaking as she instinctively stepped forward, slipping slightly on the oil. Miss Celeste stopped, but Celeste was already gone, lost to a storm of rage she had never been taught to control. "You embarrass me!" she screamed, grabbing soup cans and hurling them down the aisle. Metal clanged violently as cans slammed into displays, denting shelves, rolling toward terrified shoppers. "You don't get to say no to me." A mother yanked her child into her arms. A man ducked behind a stack of paper towels. Phones were up now, dozens of them, red recording lights blinking like warning signals. Celeste shoved the cart with brutal force. It crashed into a cereal display, sending boxes tumbling in a bright, ridiculous avalanche. Cartoon mascots stared up from the floor, crushed under designer heels. "You want me to live like this?" she shrieked, grabbing bags of rice and slashing them open with her car keys. White grains spilled everywhere, sliding across the floor like snow. "This is what you think I deserve." Alarms began to blare. Somewhere, a manager was shouting into a walkie-talkie. "Security to aisle 7. Now." Mabel stood frozen. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just watched. 15 years flashed through her mind, bandaging scraped knees, staying up through fevers, defending Celeste to teachers, to nannies, to anyone who dared complain. She had given this girl her patience, her care, her loyalty. And now she was nothing. "Please," Mabel whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Please stop. You're hurting people." Celeste turned on her like a spotlight, snapping into focus. "You're hurting me," she shouted, pointing with a shaking finger. "You think you're better than me because you said no? You're just the help." The words hit harder than any thrown object. 2 security guards burst into the aisle, heavy footsteps pounding, radios crackling. "Ma'am, step away from the displays." Celeste's fury burned bright for one last second. Then just as suddenly it collapsed. Her shoulders sagged. Her breath hitched. The noise faded into a dull roar. Surrounded by destruction, oil, cereal, rice, broken glass, Celeste sank to the filthy floor like a fallen queen. And she cried. Loud, messy, performative. "She was so mean to me," Celeste wailed, clutching her knees, mascara streaking down her face as she pointed at Mabel. "She wouldn't let me have anything." The phone zoomed in. The story was already being written, just not the way Mabel feared most. Because while Celeste sobbed for sympathy, the internet was watching. And someone somewhere had just hit upload. The crying worked, at least at first. Celeste Sterling's sobs echoed down aisle 7, bouncing off metal shelves and linoleum floors, raw and theatrical. Her voice rose and fell like a practice performance. Every gasp perfectly pitched to pull attention, every tremble designed to summon rescue. And rescue came. Not from her parents. Not from lawyers. Not yet. From strangers. "Oh my God, is she okay?" a woman whispered near the frozen foods. "Someone get her water," another voice said. "She looks traumatized." Celeste heard everything through her fingers. She always did. Mabel stood a few steps away, utterly still, her shoes soaked with oil, rice sticking to the hem of her skirt. She felt like she'd been stripped naked in public. Not physically, but in a way far worse. Years of quiet service reduced to a single phrase echoing in her ears. You're just the help. A security guard crouched beside Celeste, lowering his voice. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? Celeste lifted her head slowly, eyes red, lips trembling. She looked small now, fragile, a billionaire's daughter wrapped in the posture of a wounded child. She humiliated me, Celeste said, pointing again at Mabel. She screamed at me in front of everyone. She took things out of my hands. She made me feel poor. Mabel flinched. That's not, she started then stopped. Her throat closed. Who would believe her? The guard glanced between them. Ma'am, he said to Mabel, his tone polite but distant. Is that true? Mabel opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I told her no, she said quietly. That's all I did. The word no hung in the air like forbidden language. A murmur rippled through the crowd. She just told her no? That's it. Kids these days. But Celeste wasn't done. She grabbed me, Celeste added suddenly. Mabel's head snapped up. I did not. You did, Celeste insisted, tears spilling fresh. You scared me. I didn't feel safe. The crowd leaned in. That was the moment the balance tipped. Security straightened. Radios crackled. One guard spoke into his shoulder mic, eyes never leaving Mabel. Possible altercation. Need management. Mabel felt the floor tilt. She had raised Celeste, protected her, loved her in the only way she knew how. And now she was a threat? I would never hurt her, Mabel said, voice shaking. Never. Celeste sobbed louder. That's when the first phone notification chimed. Then another, and another. Across the store, across the city, across the internet. The video was spreading. A shaky clip titled Billionaire's Daughter Loses It at Walmart hit TikTok. 30 seconds long. No context. Just Celeste screaming, shelves falling, and one final shot. Mabel standing stiff and silent, looking guilty simply because she wasn't crying. Within minutes, it jumped platforms. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. Comments exploded. Rich kids are the worst. Fire the maid immediately. Why is no one helping that poor girl? This is abuse. The truth didn't trend. Drama did. A Walmart manager arrived, face pale, tie crooked. We need statements, he said quickly. And damages. This is thousands of dollars. Celeste sniffed. Send the bill to my father. The manager hesitated. We still need my father, Celeste repeated, suddenly calm, suddenly cold, is Sterling Industries. Do you know what that means? The manager nodded instantly. Mabel watched his spine straighten. Of course. Power had entered the room. Celeste was helped to her feet, wrapped in a blanket someone had fetched from housewares. She leaned into the attention, trembling just enough to look wounded, not guilty. Mabel was asked to step aside. Just routine, the guard said. But routine felt like exile. As she stood near the end of the aisle, unseen, unheard, Mabel's phone buzzed in her pocket. One message, then 5, then dozens. A neighbor, a cousin, an old friend. Is this you? Are you okay? What did you do? Her hand shook as she opened a link. There she was, frozen in a thumbnail, her face mid-blink, her mouth slightly open. The caption screamed, Maid pushes billionaire's daughter into breakdown. Mabel sank onto a crate of bottled water. 15 years of quiet loyalty erased in 15 seconds of video. Across the aisle, Celeste caught her staring. Their eyes met. For just a moment, the noise faded. And in that silence, Celeste smiled. Not wide, not cruel, satisfied, because she knew something Mabel didn't yet. The Sterling family didn't apologize. They buried. And this was only the beginning. By the time they left the store, the story had already outgrown the truth. Outside Walmart, police lights painted the parking lot red and blue, though no one was in handcuffs. That alone told Mabel everything she needed to know. Power didn't need sirens. Power didn't need shouting. Power moved quietly, efficiently behind closed doors. Celeste was escorted out first, a blanket over her shoulders, a bottle of water in her hand, a security guard shielding her from cameras as if she were the victim of a crime rather than the cause of it. Shoppers whispered. Phones followed her every step. Poor girl. She was clearly traumatized. Money can't buy peace. Celeste lowered her head, playing the part perfectly. But as she passed Mabel, she slowed just enough. "You should have listened," she murmured, too low for anyone else to hear. Mabel didn't answer. She couldn't. Her chest felt hollow, as if something vital had been scooped out and left behind on the Walmart floor with the broken glass. Inside the store, the cleanup crew worked fast. Evidence disappeared. Spills wiped away. Shelves res-tacked. By the time the news vans arrived, the aisle looked almost normal. Almost. Mabel sat in the manager's office, hands folded tightly in her lap. The air smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Across from her, the manager avoided eye contact, shuffling papers that didn't matter. "We'll need to file an incident report," he said carefully. "Standard procedure." "Yes," Mabel replied. Her voice sounded far away, even to herself. A man in a gray suit entered without knocking. Expensive watch. Calm smile. Sterling Industries' confidence stitched into every seam. "I'll take it from here," he said. The manager stood immediately. "Of course, sir." The man turned to Mabel. His eyes were polite. "Empty. Mabel, isn't it?" She nodded. "I'm Mr. Halvorson, family legal counsel." He sat across from her, folding his hands. "This situation has spiraled." Mabel swallowed. "I didn't hurt her." "We know," he said smoothly. "But knowing something and proving something are very different in the court of public opinion." He slid his phone across the desk. Millions of views. Hashtags multiplying by the second. Hashtag justice for Celeste. Hashtag fire the maid. Hashtag Walmart meltdown. This narrative, Halvorson continued, is damaging. To the family. To the brand. To you. To me. Mabel echoed. He smiled thinly. "You're already receiving messages, aren't you?" Mabel didn't answer. "We can make this go away," he said. A statement. A quiet resignation. Severance. Enough money to keep you comfortable. "And if I don't?" she asked. His smile didn't change. "Then this becomes very unpleasant." For the first time, Mabel felt something stronger than fear. Anger. "I raised her," Mabel said softly. "I loved her." Halvorson leaned back. "That may be true, but love doesn't trend." He stood. "Think carefully. We'll be in touch." When Mabel finally left the store, the parking lot was empty. Night had fallen. Her phone buzzed nonstop in her pocket, but she didn't look. At home, she sat alone in her small apartment. Lights off, the TV glowing with breaking news. Sources say the young heiress was emotionally distressed. Questions surrounding the conduct of household staff. Sterling family yet to release an official statement. Mabel turned the TV off. She stared at her hands. Hands that had cooked meals, wiped tears, held a child through nightmares. Hands now painted online as violent, cruel, disposable. Across the city, in a penthouse wrapped in glass and silence, Celeste sat on her bed, scrolling. She watched edits of herself crying, slowed down, softened, set to sad music. She watched strangers defend her with passion they'd never shown her in real life. Her phone buzzed. "Dad, lawyers handled it." "Don't worry." Celeste smiled. She tossed the phone aside and stood, looking at her reflection. Mascara smudged. Hair messy. Still beautiful. Still untouchable. For the first time that day, she felt calm. But far away, in a dark apartment, Mabel made a decision. She opened her phone. Not to defend herself. Not yet. She opened a folder she'd kept for years. Photos. Videos. Messages. 15 years of quiet moments the Sterlings never thought would matter. And as the internet roared with lies, the truth waited patiently, ready to decide who would survive the fallout. Mabel didn't sleep that night. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic drifting through the thin windows. She sat at her small kitchen table, the glow of her phone lighting her tired face as her fingers scrolled through memories she had never meant to use as weapons. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, late-night videos taken quietly from doorways. Celeste at 6, screaming because her shoes didn't match her dress. Celeste at 10, throwing a crystal vase that narrowly missed a nanny's head. Celeste at 15, laughing while another housekeeper cried in the background. Back then, these moments had felt like proof of patience, proof of loyalty, proof that Mabel was needed. Now they felt like receipts. Her phone buzzed again. A voicemail this time. She hesitated before pressing play. Mabel, Mr. Halvorson's voice said smoothly, "We've sent over the paperwork. Sign it by morning, and this ends quietly." Refusal would be unwise. The line went dead. Mabel set the phone down slowly. For years, she had survived by staying invisible, by cleaning up messes, literal and emotional, before anyone important noticed. She had swallowed insults, corrected behavior behind closed doors, protected the sterling name even when it hurt her own dignity. But invisibility had a cost. And tonight, she realized she had already paid it. Across the city, Celeste woke late the next morning wrapped in silk sheets, sunlight spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her phone was already buzzing when she reached for it. Millions of notifications. She scrolled lazily. Fans defending her. Influencers dissecting her trauma. Psychologists offering sympathy-filled threads about emotional neglect among wealthy youth. Celeste smirked. She clicked into a new video, one of many reaction clips. A woman shook her head at the screen. "That maid should have known her place," the woman said. "You don't say no to a girl like that." Celeste liked the comment. Then her phone froze. The screen refreshed. A new video had appeared at the top of her feed. Posted 20 seconds ago. The account name was unfamiliar. The caption was simple. "You don't know the whole story." Celeste tapped it. The video opened to grainy footage from years ago, security camera footage inside the Sterling home. A younger Celeste stood in a hallway, screaming. Her voice, sharp, venomous. Even then, "You're stupid," child Celeste yelled, shoving a housekeeper hard enough to send her into a wall. The clip cut. Another video. Celeste at 13, throwing a glass across the dining room. It shattered inches from Mabel's feet. Mabel's voice was calm. "Steady. Miss Celeste, please." Another cut. A more recent clip. Celeste laughing as she knocked groceries out of Mabel's hands in the mansion kitchen. "Pick it up," Celeste said. "That's what you're here for." The final frame froze on Mabel's face. Tired, composed, quietly enduring. The comments loaded instantly. "Wait. What? This isn't a one-time thing. Why was this hidden?" "That poor woman." Celeste's breath caught. She refreshed. More clips. More angles. More timestamps. This wasn't a leak. This was a timeline. Across town, Mabel sat perfectly still as her phone exploded with notifications she hadn't expected. Messages weren't angry anymore. They were apologetic, supportive, furious, on her behalf. A journalist DM'd her. Then another. Then 5 more. "We'd like to hear your side." Mabel closed her eyes. For the first time since Walmart, her chest loosened just a little. Back in the penthouse, Celeste stood abruptly, phone clutched in her hand. "Dad," she shouted. Her father's assistant answered instead, voice tense. "We're aware." "Make it stop," Celeste snapped. "Do something." "We're trying," the assistant said. "But the footage is authentic." Celeste's reflection stared back at her from the black screen. No filters, no edits, no audience. Just her. And for the first time in her life, the world wasn't bending to protect her image. It was watching, judging, and choosing sides. As the internet began to turn, one thing became painfully clear. The meltdown at Walmart wasn't the scandal. It was the spark, and the fire was just getting started. The shift was unmistakable. By noon, the narrative had flipped so violently that even seasoned commentators struggled to keep up. The same anchors who had spoken gently about a distressed young woman now sat stiff-backed, words sharpened with caution. A troubling pattern of behavior. Long-term mistreatment of household staff. Questions about accountability within elite families. Celeste Sterling's name trended again, but this time not with hearts, with outrage. In her penthouse, Celeste paced barefoot across marble floors, refreshing her phone over and over as if she could force reality to change. Every refresh brought new commentary, new breakdowns, new stitched videos comparing the Walmart footage to the old security clips. She didn't snap. One creator said bluntly, "She's been like this." Celeste screamed and hurled her phone onto the couch. "No," she whispered. "They're lying. She's lying." But deep down she knew, for the first time in her life, There was no adult rushing in to clean up the mess. No private apology tours. No checks quietly written to make people disappear. Sterling Industries released a statement that afternoon, carefully worded. Cold. We do not condone any form of mistreatment. We are conducting an internal review. No apology. No defense. No mention of Mabel's name. That silence spoke louder than any press conference. Mabel watched it all unfold from her small living room, hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea. Reporters waited outside her building now. Strangers sent flowers. Donations poured into a fundraiser someone had started without asking her. But Mabel didn't feel victorious. She felt tired. When a knock came at her door that evening, she already knew who it would be. Mr. Halvorson stood there, suit slightly rumpled for the first time. His smile was gone. We'd like to revise the offer, he said. Mabel shook her head gently. I'm not signing anything. He sighed. You don't understand what you're walking away from. She met his eyes, calm and steady. I understand exactly. The next morning, Celeste was asked to make a statement of her own. She sat in front of a neutral backdrop, makeup flawless, posture perfect. But something was missing. The confidence, the certainty. I'm learning, she said carefully, reading words written by someone else. I regret how things appeared. Appeared. The internet noticed. They always did. The video failed to land. Sponsors pulled back. Invitations quietly vanished. Her name became a case study rather than a headline. Consequences, not loud, not dramatic, but permanent. Weeks later, the Walmart aisle had been fully restored. No sign of oil, no broken glass, no rice scattered like snow. But the people remembered. Mabel no longer worked for the Sterlings. She didn't need to. She took a quiet job at a community center, teaching life skills, budgeting, patience. Things she had mastered long ago. Sometimes parents recognized her. Sometimes they thanked her. Sometimes they apologized. And Mabel accepted it. Not with pride, not with bitterness, but with peace. On a shelf in her apartment sat the old white envelope, the one that once held $200. She kept it as a reminder, not of humiliation, but of the moment she stopped being invisible. Because in the end, the Real declaration of war wasn't Celeste's scream. It was Mabel's silence, followed by the truth. And that truth changed everything. 3 months later, the internet had mostly moved on. It always did. A new scandal replaced the old one. A new meltdown. A new villain. But for the people directly touched by what happened in aisle 7, life didn't reset with a refresh button. For Celeste Sterling, the fall was quiet, but relentless. She still had money, still had the penthouse, still had her last name. What she didn't have was access. Fashion houses stopped answering emails. Event invitations got lost. Friends who once laughed a little too loudly at her jokes now took days to reply, or didn't reply at all. Even sympathy had limits, and Celeste had crossed them. One afternoon, she sat alone in a cafe she used to rent out for privacy. No cameras, no entourage, just her reflection in the window. For the first time, no one was watching. And that terrified her more than the backlash ever had. Across town, Mabel finished locking up the community center for the night. Kids' laughter still echoed faintly in the halls she'd just cleaned. Not because it was her job, but because she liked leaving places better than she found them. A teenage girl lingered by the door. "Miss Mabel," she asked softly. "My mom said you're the lady from the video." Mabel smiled gently. "I suppose I am." The girl hesitated. "I just wanted to say, I'm trying to be better to people. Because of you." Mabel's throat tightened. "Thank you," she said. "That means more than you know." That night, Mabel walked home slowly, the city calm around her. She passed a Walmart. The automatic doors slid open and closed, ordinary and unremarkable. No chaos, no screams, just life going on. Inside, someone argued over cereal prices. A child begged for candy. A tired worker restocked shelves. Normal. And that was the point. Somewhere high above the city, Celeste Sterling stared at her phone one last time before setting it down. No notifications. No applause. No outrage. Just silence. She had finally learned what no meant. Not from Mabel's lips, but from the world itself. And far away, In a small apartment filled with quiet dignity, Mabel slept peacefully, knowing that for the first time in 15 years, the mess wasn't hers to clean up. The weeks that followed were quiet in ways the Sterling household had never known. Celeste Sterling moved through her gilded world like a ghost, her every step measured. The penthouse felt colder. The designer dresses hung untouched. Invitations went unanswered. The headlines had stopped mentioning her name, but the whispers never did. People remember the meltdown. People remember the videos. People remember the truth. Celeste's parents handled it as best they could behind closed doors. Lawyers, PR teams, whispered apologies. But for Celeste, no apology, no check, no statement could undo what had happened. She had been seen. She had been exposed. And in a world where appearances were everything, she was suddenly human. Mabel, on the other hand, thrived. Not publicly. She never wanted fame, but quietly, steadily. The community center became her sanctuary. She taught more than budgeting and life skills. She taught dignity, patience, and resilience. Word of her reputation spread, not for scandal, but for integrity. People came to her for advice, for mentorship, for guidance. One evening, Mabel sat on her small balcony, a cup of tea in hand, city lights stretching out before her. Her phone buzzed. A simple message from a journalist who had been following the story. "We're doing a feature on people who make a difference quietly." Interested, she smiled. Not for the cameras. Not for anyone else. Just because it felt right. Meanwhile, Celeste sat in her penthouse, staring at the city below, alone with her thoughts. She remembered the Walmart aisle, the chaos, the cameras, the screams. And she remembered Mabel, the woman who had raised her, guided her, endured her tantrums without complaint. For the first time, Celeste realized something she had never been taught in her world of privilege. Respect, kindness, and humanity couldn't be bought. They had to be earned. A message appeared on her phone. It was from Mabel. "I hope one day you learn that life isn't about what you can take, but what you give." Celeste stared at it, the words sinking in. She typed nothing. She didn't know how. Perhaps she never would. But for the first time, she felt a flicker of understanding. And that was enough. In the end, the Walmart aisle was restored. The floors were cleaned. The shelves rebuilt. Life went on. But some lessons, loud, messy, and unforgettable, lasted forever. And Mabel, the woman who had once been invisible, finally became unforgettable. The storm had passed. The chaos was gone. And for the first time in her life, both women, on opposite sides of the world, understood what power, true power, really meant.